Good evening, good afternoon, and good morning. Welcome to the second SLP developers meeting for BitcoinCash, which of course is the only place that SLP exists. We have a great panel today and we're going to go over a number of things that are happening in the SLP world. It's an exciting time for BitcoinCash development at very many levels. So I'll start off with turning off my phone so we don't have a lot of ringing. That was smart. And I'll start off with my top left-hand corner. Chris, could you introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, I'm Chris Troutner. I'm a senior JavaScript developer for Bitcoin.com. I help maintain developer.bitcoin.com and rest.bitcoin.com and the Bitbox SDK.
Sounds like you do nothing all day. All right, move on to the next on my list is Andreas Larson. Andreas, could you introduce yourself, please?
Hey, I'm Andreas. I'm working for Bitcoin.com as a backend engineer on the Bitcoin.com wallet. And I'm also the developer behind the Java SLP indexer from Bitcoin.com.
Excellent. Thank you, Andreas, and welcome. And next on my list, I have Spend BCH. Could you introduce yourself, please?
Hi, sure. I'm also Drew, and I also work with Bitcoin.com. I'm a senior BitcoinCash engineer, and I did a lot of the SLP integrations and implementations for Badger extension, and also for the backend for some of the services that we use in the web.
Excellent. Thank you, Drew. Next on my list, I have JT Freeman.
Hello, I run the SLP side of Fountainhead.cash. I also create the SLP Explorer and Graph Search++ and help with SLP DB testing.
Okay, thanks, JT. Next on my list, I have, I never know how to pronounce this, Pokkst.
That's correct, yeah. Hey, I'm Pokkst. I work on Crescent Cache. It's at Bitcoin.cash, and I maintain the Java Bitcoin Cache library, BitcoinCash J, and I also work at Bitcoin.com working on the Bitcoin Cash register.
Excellent. Thank you, Pokkst. Welcome. The first thing on the agenda is version 1.0 of as an SLP development update, and I'll ask JT if he can lead us forward on this and maybe up his microphone just a bit.
Sure. So a ton of work has been put into SLP DB 1.0, and almost all of it is James Kramer's great work. It's getting really close to release right now, and we're just sort of going through testing and trying to iron out some of the remaining bugs. Probably the most exciting part about it is the performance has been massively improved from previous version. And now getting to 1.0, we're now at sort of a stable level with this. For some quick numbers on this, the blockchain sync time has been reduced from around a week down to 8 hours, and it can now do around 10 transactions per second compared to previously around 1. So I think it'll lead us, for the next year or two pretty well. Those are the big things. There's a few breaking changes, but they're relatively minor. It's more or less the same SLP DB, but heavily rewritten to be more performant.
Thanks, JT. We are getting a little bit of a breakup on your sound. In the meantime, do we have any questions or comments to JT?
Just to clarify, SLP DB version 1 has not yet been released, but it's going to be released soon.
Okay.
That's right, yeah.
So soon, I just have to ask. My experience in the software industry is sometimes soon means 18 months, sometimes it means 2 weeks.
Well, I talked to James. Go ahead, JT.
Yeah, so right now I have the Explorer working with it completely, but there's just a few bugs that are trying to be fixed. So I think 2 weeks is the reasonable side for that.
Okay. We promise we'll hold you to it. How's that? All right.
Well, it's not my fault if it takes longer. So
I know. I'm
I'm just the tester.
Sure. I'm just giving you a hard time, JT. So, any further questions or clarifications for JT?
Yeah, JT, was there anything else you wanted to talk about, like graph search or any other updates?
The Explorer is getting a big update as soon as 1.0 gets released as well, which also is a big speed improvement. Lazy loading's used throughout the entire application now instead of just in a few spots. So instead of having that multi-second wait with a lot of pages, you're not going to have that anymore. Also, Graph Search Plus is going to be doing its next release. Right now, that's also in testing. And that has a really cool, the improvement with it is it allows wallets to be able to request a delta of the DAG instead of the entire DAG. So you can provide it transaction IDs and it will find this, the minimum amount of data that needs to send to a wallet to do full client-side validation. And so that's going to be put into the next BitcoinCash SLP release.
Oh yeah, and that reminds me that SLP, so the BitcoinCash SLP was a separate fork of BitcoinCash, and Kalen's not on the call, unfortunately. He had to go to bed, but it sounds like that is getting merged into the main line, which is really exciting. So BitcoinCash, the main line, will work with SLP tokens by default.
Yep. So, and he's the perfect guy to do it. He's an amazing developer. But I think that's going to be, a few months out from now because it's a pretty big job. So.
Oh, okay. I wasn't aware of that. And JT, can you just, for the people who are watching this, can you give just a brief overview of what Graph Search Plus is?
Sure. So if you have a SLP wallet, to actually validate the transactions, you need to look at the entire DAG, which is basically the tree of transactions back to the Genesis transaction. So if you can imagine that, more highly used tokens, especially ones that are being sent back and forth constantly, will have these really large DAGs they need to send. What this does is provide a really optimized, it's just like an optimized server to deal specifically with that problem, so that wallets can have more secure transactions and be able to validate them completely. So what that ends up really meaning is that you don't have to trust a third party. The Graph Search Plus server could give you bad data, and if you're running the client-side validation, you'll be able to figure that out and query a different server or just wait until everything's back to normal. So,
great.
And is it particularly targeted for SPV wallets or any wallet though, right? Really?
Yeah, any wallet.
Yeah. Okay. And then I just put a link in the notes for the chat to that gist or that GitHub repo that you sent me earlier about the guidelines for implementing SLP, how you should, just sort of best practices, looking at multiple sources of truth, and just sort of things to watch out for so you don't burn tokens.
Yeah, so that's something we just got up in the last few days. And so anyone that's working on a wallet that wants to do SLP implementation has a pretty good list of guidelines here for doing that in a safe way. And if you follow them, you shouldn't be able to burn any tokens or anything.
Good. We want to avoid burning tokens unless it's intentional. So that's great. I will include those things that are being put up in the guidelines here for the show notes, and they're going out to the attendees as well here. But they'll go in the show notes with the video that we'll be producing later. Is there anything further for JT on version 1.0? Any other questions from anyone? Any questions from the audience? We have a small panel, so if you have any questions and as we're going along, feel free to use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. But not seeing any questions right now, we'll move on to the next item, which is the SLP Java indexer and an introduction by Andreas Larson.
Yeah. So what is the SLP indexer? So the SLP indexer that we built is basically an indexer just like SLP DB or any other indexer. The reason we started building this instead of going with a software that already existed was because we get a lot of like people coming to bitcoin.com and like asking us exchanges and like, hey, we want SLP tokens. How do we do that? Kind of that's what they want, and we've always kind of redirected them to like outside resources or other places. So that's kind of the main thing, is that we want to be able to, if someone comes to us and be like, hey, we have something for you. It's very easy to set up. It's worked. It's built with enterprise in mind. So kind of the scalability and things that enterprise like exchanges and things need. So that's kind of the background, is like, why do we even do this? And then we also use it for the new native bitcoin.com wallet that hopefully you tried out and used. Yeah, and that's kind of the background to the entire project. And then I was put on to basically the first was like build it for the wallet and make sure that it can handle the load from our wallet, because that's something, if we put all of our users into SLP, it needs to be able to handle both validations speeds. That was basically the biggest important thing for us, is how can we get the fastest green check mark or notifications like you've received tokens. That was kind of the baseline. How can we do that in the least amount of milliseconds to give you the same BCH experience, but with tokens, even though they actually need to do validation, and there's a lot more extra stuff going on with tokens compared to BCH, right? So we went on another validation route, kind of, compared to other indexers. We went with the assume valid, assume that the parent transaction is always valid until proven otherwise, basically. Which means that in the tree in the graph of tokens, basically when we get a UTXO or a token transaction, we assume that its parent is valid, and if we know that it's not valid, then it's invalid. And if we know that it's we don't know if it's valid or not, since maybe it comes in a block, maybe we missed it, things like that, we assume it's valid or unknown, basically, until we can actually do the full validation of it. And that basically makes us not needing to go through the entire up until the Genesis block or do anything more than just going through one by one or one step back, which makes the validation pretty fast. We did some testing on that to try to make the best performance, and what we could see was that way gave better performance, and it could, the worst case was that we don't know if it's valid or not, so it's unknown, instead of, so that's, it doesn't give false positive, it just gives false negative. So and this is kind of, we've been actually in talks with exchanges and stuff to give this out to them, and also for the bitcoin.com wallet. So yeah.
That's great.
That's kind of the small picture of the big picture.
Sure. We have some clarifying questions, or
I learned some information. So JT's been running a copy of this. So just for those watching, just to clarify, the Java indexer is open source, and it's in the bitcoin.com repository on GitHub. And JT ran some benchmarks. Now, this didn't include the Mongo database. This was, or maybe you can clarify this, but the numbers that you were giving me, JT, is that it looks like it's synced in 8 to 9 hours and required about 2 gigabytes of RAM, which was really performant. Was there any other details there that you wanted to share, JT or Andreas?
Yeah, that's correct. And yeah, it's synced really fast.
Yeah.
And responds really fast too. So.
Yeah. So to give some background on that, we actually ran when we did our syncing, initial syncing, we actually ran it on larger machines, and then that on AWS to like spot instances, so you can run them really cheap, pretty big for a short amount of time, to actually. I think it was 4 hours or something like that if you pushed it really hard, and also ran with the Mongo database. I think the thing that will stop you is kind of the reading to disk in Mongo. So we ran with extra, like a little bit extra speed on our Mongo instances, and we can actually spit it pretty fast. I've also had some ideas to actually make that even faster, which regards to how it currently downloads block. Now it currently downloads one block and then handles that block and then downloads the next one. But during the time you're handling the previous block, you could actually just keep downloading blocks, maybe download a couple blocks ahead. So it actually does it. So you can actually have the next block ready and download it, and not having to wait for the next download to actually increase the performance even more for the initial sync. So that's something I've been looking into doing when there's time, which there's none of. So yeah.
Great. I just need a bit of clarification because I lost signal for a few minutes. Was this an answer to the question from the anonymous attendee?
No. I think that question though. So there is the so let me see if I can pull that question up again.
Chris, if you don't mind reading the question, that would be helpful.
Yeah. So the question was: any plans on language SDKs for SLP DB? Current ones seem to build off of Bitbox's API. So SLP DB uses a query language called, is it JQ? I think. And
JQ is the you can use that to process the JSON. So that's like its own language as like a response formatter. Otherwise, the query language is BitQuery, which came from BitDB.
Right. And so what we do in rest.bitcoin.com, which ends up translating to Bitbox, is we have an API endpoint that makes a JQ query to SLP DB to get that information. And then when the Java indexer was created, it used that as a template. So the API calls are essentially the same between REST versus the Java indexer. So they're fairly JavaScript focused, and but Pokkst is going to talk about his Java library. So that's an alternate language implementation for working with SLP tokens. But yeah, I think really the data lives in a Mongo database for both of these indexers. So natively, that's what you have to get to. And then I don't think there's any plans in the works to make any sort of language specific SDKs for that. The plan really is just to wrap that around an API endpoint that way it's language agnostic, and every language can make an API call.
Yeah, that's correct. We have for the Java indexer, yeah, like you said, the API that maps the rest of Bitcoin.com, and then also we are gonna probably make a version 3 with maybe some improvements from some other endpoints that people have been asking for, and also some that we use specifically in the wallet.
Great. Thank you, Andreas. Any further questions or comments before we move on to the next item on the agenda? Okay. The next item, I believe, is Bitcoin.com wallet minting batons and NFTs, which will be led by Chris, but it's a group discussion. And according to the agenda, let's keep this informative but brief.
Yeah, so I mean, the good news is that the new version of the Bitcoin.com wallet works with SLP tokens, so that's great. But for developers out there, hopefully that's who's watching this because it's a dev meeting. The current version will burn minting batons and non-fungible tokens, NFTs. So just to recap real quick on what an NFT is. Hopefully you're aware of CryptoKitties, that the Ethereum trading game. An NFT represents like it's a non-fungible, so it's a very unique thing. It's not intended to be fungible like a dollar is or like normal tokens would be. And so for the moment, don't send those to the Bitcoin.com wallet. I did check with the wallet team, which Andreas, you can speak to this, and it sounds like it has been fixed on the back end, and it just needs to be, the fixes need to be implemented in the front end, and a new version needs to be released. So hopefully that should be fixed soon. But this is just kind of a public bulletin for developers for now.
Okay. And is there a timeline on that release for the next upgrade?
So I rolled it out yesterday in Tokyo. So the for the backend so for some of our users, we're gonna test it out and see. We've been testing it, and then we're gonna roll it out probably today. I would say I'm gonna roll that out today, and that will be fixing the burning. It will not fix the sending part of it, which is a client side thing, right? So that will be in a later release for the client, but this should stop burning them at least.
That's great, Andreas. I believe that we'll be receiving that on the west coast of North America sometime within 24 hours, if that's the case. That's usually the way it works.
Yep.
All right, great. Further discussion on minting batons and NFTs. Any questions from anybody on the panel?
Yeah, real quick, and hopefully Andreas or JT can answer this. My understanding is that if someone was to send a minting, but so it sounds like that's great, the burning's fixed. So if someone was to accidentally send an NFT or a minting baton to the wallet, they should be able to use Electron Cash to retrieve it, right?
Yes, that's correct. So they will not. They will just be hidden. The minting baton UTXO will be hidden, and same with the NFT. They will kind of be hidden in, and you will still be able to retrieve them with your mnemonic in some other token wallet.
Okay, so not lost forever. Great. That's
I
always.
do want to say this was an issue with Crescent Cash as well. JT brought it to my attention, and I already fixed it and deployed the update like a week ago or two. So that's been good for a bit.
Great, thanks, Pokkst. That's good to hear. I know lots of people are using Crescent Cash.
Yeah, and for those that aren't, Pokkst, when you start talk about the Java library, also talk about Crescent Cash, because I know I'm not incredibly familiar with it. I played with it a little bit, but I'm sure there's people watching this who haven't played with it and aren't aware of all the features.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
And we will be getting to that in the next item. If there's no more questions about NFTs and burning baton bins or baton mints, try and say that correctly, I'll ask Pokkst to take it away with your Java library and all the good stuff you're doing.
All right. Cool. So just recently, I pushed out an update to BitcoinCash J, which adds an extension of it that adds SLP support. And so for right now, it only has basic SLP receiving and sending. And so there's no like minting batons, there's no creating tokens, there's also no like NFTs yet. But the reason I made it was because the old Bitcoin.com SLP SDK was kind of outdated. It had a huge privacy issue of like it had address reuse. And so I created this extension to add HD support. So there's multiple addresses now. It also uses SPV, and it doesn't rely on the Bitcoin.com REST API. It uses like the actual just Bitcoin Cash network and SLP DB. So it has like a bunch of new features and fixes. I do have token creation in the works. So like I already have the script for it and everything to go. I just need to implement that into Crescent Cash. And with this, it also means Crescent Cash Desktop has SLP support now, because the Bitcoin.com SLP SDK had like Android specific libraries, and so this is a much needed improvement. And for those that don't know, Crescent Cash is a SPV wallet, and it has like, I don't mean to brag, but like a bunch of like flagship features that I like implemented first. Don't mean to brag. It's the first wallet featuring full cash account support, so like the alias system that Jonathan Silverblood and a few others created, cointext SMS integration, custom op return messages for mobile, and then UTXO management as well. So just if you haven't already, go check it out. It's a pretty nice wallet. So
You know, Pokkst, I'm going to just jump in here and say something that I wanted to say for a while. It's the first time I've had a chance to talk to you.
yeah.
Please brag about what you're doing. You're doing fantastic work. And I don't want it to go to your head, but just recognize that if you don't tell people what you're doing, nobody's going to do it for you. So by all means,
True.
when you've got something good, tell us about it for sure.
Thank you.
Okay. Any questions for Pokkst?
Well, that was just Crescent Cache. I still want to hear about the Java library.
Of course.
Oh, I talked about the Java library for a bit. It does follow the spec, of course. There was an issue with burning Minty batons and NFTs, but that's already been fixed. It was fixed within 2 hours of JT alerting me. So as I said, right now there's only like basic sending and receiving. The code is already there for creating tokens, and then I do intend to add support for minting batons as well, and then hopefully NFTs as well afterwards. So it's very early stages right now, but I do have a lot of stuff planned. So
We're not surprised, put it that way. Any other questions for Pokkst? Anybody in the audience have any questions for Pokkst? Nope. Okay. I think we're ready to move on to the final item on the agenda, and I'm sure there might be some further discussion about general items after this, but that would be the postage protocol updates. And Chris, we've been waiting to hear more about this, so please bring us up to date.
Yeah. Unfortunately, there's not a lot to share, but I did want to put it on the agenda because I know it's on a lot of people's minds. The one thing I have been allowed to share is that the developer services team at Bitcoin.com is going to take a more proactive role in rolling out the postage protocol. Vin is part of the team now, and so we're going to roll that into the roadmap. We don't really have any details on that yet. I did some searching, and it's been a while, and because there was a link to a repo that someone had used to build an open source version of the postage protocol, and so let me share those links.
Okay. So because you're giving us a little bit of a teaser here, I think it's probably safe to say that in the next SLP meeting, we'll have an opportunity to get some more details on the postage protocol. We're not
I hope so.
Not 18 months, please.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope so. But for those who are frothing at the mouth to get some the postage protocol implemented for their token, which I know there are people out there. There is a Telegram channel that I posted, and we'll put that in the show notes. And I'm gonna butcher his name. I'm not gonna remember it off the top of my head, but one of the developers that's part of the Mint team, I believe, created an open source version. It's MIT licensed, just written in TypeScript, and so the link to the GitHub repository is also there. And in the Telegram channel, he posted a video of a demo of using the very similar to what Vin Armani demo posted, a video of using Badger Wallet, a fork of Badger Wallet that was able to use the postage protocol. So for those who can't wait, someone has done the heavy lifting, so it's out there to play with.
Great. Excellent. Okay. Anyone have any questions for Chris about the thing that he can't tell us too much about? No?
Yeah. Well, I think that's all I can. since it looks like we're going to probably just jump into the general stuff next, with all this talk of SLP supporting wallets, I wanted to let people know that I have a repository called SLP Cli Wallet. It's an NPM package, but it's really a developer wallet, and it's intended for command line usage. So there's no user interface, which makes it a lot faster to do rapid prototyping since you don't have a UI to worry about. So if people are looking to, you know, we've talked a lot about wallets on this call, but generally, like, most people want to, or most developers I interact with want to build, you know, some business use case, like maybe a Telegram token bot, or you know, some sort of e-commerce application, and those are still going to need some sort of integrated wallet, and that's what SLP Cli Wallet is good for, because it's an NPM library, so you can drop it into any project and automatically get an HD wallet that interacts with SLP tokens. And we've been using it for a lot of testing in the developer services team. So it's fairly robust and battle tested from that perspective.
Great. Does anyone have any further questions for Chris regarding the information he's provided?
I do want to give a shout out to Kieran. Thank you for joining, man. I know you're not. I mean, you're all over the crypto space, but just want to give a shout out. I recognize that he's here, and I'm honored.
Yeah, it's nice to have some people in the audience to be able to ask questions as well. Any other questions from anyone?
There's a question from Nath Swerve.
Excellent.
He asked, on an SLP project use case point, are there any projects that are proving challenges for developers? I don't have any challenges for me, but maybe someone else.
I think the biggest challenge, so I have a Telegram channel, I'll try and find the link to it here as I talk, called SLP Devs for Hire, and that's supposed to be a welcoming, fairly non-technical discussion group for entrepreneurs who are looking for developers with SLP experience. So I encourage developers on this call to go there, and I'm going to post the link right here. And yeah, it's specifically for entrepreneurs and SLP developers to mingle and to talk about these things. And so a lot of the challenges I see there are just with ignorance, with just entrepreneurs trying to wrap their head around the specification and understand what you can do with them, what you can't do with them, what the limitations are. And so in general, those are the biggest challenges that I see, is really just getting the information out there, particularly to non-technical people who want to use this in business.
Great, thanks, Chris. And that is a great group. I've been following it myself. We have another question that's come in from Prospe, and the question is, could it be possible to add another extra op return to a SLP token? So it will be useful to add info with the transaction. So you technical people should be able to answer this question.
Yeah, not currently. You'd either need a new token type to add additional metadata, or you'd have to be able to have it so that people could add additional op returns to transactions and have them be relayed.
Thanks, JT. Anybody else want to comment on that?
I just think it's funny that the question got asked, because I told James Kramer like an hour ago that somebody was going to ask that question, and I didn't know the answer.
Well, we see the question pop up a number of times. Harkens back to the old days of other op return issues. Anybody else have anything they want to add? Drew, I see you're here.
Yeah, I had a few comments real quick. So on the SLP 1.0 release that's upcoming, if you're subscribed to the developer.bitcoin.com newsletter, then we will be sending out an email very shortly with more information about that. And if you are using it right now and you have queries, you want to look into it because some of the collections are being deprecated. And so if you were doing like balance queries on addresses or something like that, then you're going to want to update that to more of a graph search type query. And I know James has some good examples of that. And we also have some examples in the rest.bitcoin.com code base of our conversions of all of our /SLP endpoints to be compatible with the new 1.0 release.
Great.
Yeah, likewise for all of the code that required to move to 1.0 for the Explorer is open source too, and anyone's free to reach out to me for help with changing any of their queries. Most of them are really easy, but it just might not be right away very obvious what to do. So there's a bunch of examples there for doing it the new way without the addresses and UTXOs collection.
I think the Fountainhead Cache Telegram channel is probably a great place to ask those sorts of questions too.
Sure. I think what we'll do is we'll make a list of all the Telegram channels where these people tend to coagulate and get some work done. So we'll add that as well. Any other comments or questions in general from the panel?
Yeah, so just to clarify on what Drew and JT just said, version 1 of SLP DB is not like released yet, but there will be notifications coming from Simple Ledger on that and developer.bitcoin.com. And if you want to sign up for the newsletter, go to developer.bitcoin.com and scroll to the bottom, and there's the sign up for the newsletter there.
Definitely do that. I have one other note real quick. On SLP, there is another coin, I guess. I won't say which one it is right now, but not only did they fork the SLP protocol, which is a testament to its success, they've also forked the Badger mobile wallet. And I just wanted to bring that up because anybody prototyping different things with SLP that wants to test things out, like a wallet can be a really great starting point. And so Badger Mobile is on the bitcoin-com GitHub repo. It's completely open source and so easy to work with that it's already been forked for completely different coins. So that's a really great starting point for rapid prototyping.
That's great. Can you give us some links to that as well, Drew?
For sure. Okay. Yeah, I'll grab some.
We'll make sure that they get into the show notes as well. Okay. I'm going to give last call. Seems appropriate. Anyone have anything further they would like to say before we wrap up? I know it's been a relatively short meeting, but as far as I can see, it's jam-packed. We're not ready to talk about SLP 2.0 yet, so we don't want to go that far ahead. But there is lots of work going on, and I'm sure Pokkst is going to surprise us with some new releases in the next little while as well.
Oh dear, you're giving me pressure now. I see.
Wow, you bring it on yourself, buddy.
Dang it.
Okay, failing that, I'd like to thank you all for attending today and look forward to having the next SLP meeting here. So thanks again.